Gold Rush 2025. Why banks and billionaires are secretly hoarding billions in precious metals. Ever notice how some folks treat gold like it's a magical cure for every global meltdown? Like it's financial Pepto-Bismol for economic diarrhea? Well, guess what? 3 major banks just went on the biggest gold shopping spree in half a century. Like they found gold bars on a buy one, get 19 free clearance rack at the Apocalypse Outlet Mall. Meanwhile, entire nations, no names, but let's just say they rhyme with Blina and Mussia, have been hoarding gold like teenagers stockpiling snacks before a gaming marathon. And, as if that weren't enough, a downright secretive cabal of billionaires has shoved about $47 billion into precious metals faster than you can say, what the fuck do they know that we don't? Now, why on earth would all these rich suit-wearing folks be locking armfuls of gold behind 10-ton vault doors? Could it be that they foresee the biggest gold rally in modern history, one they're keeping suspiciously hush-hush about? Are they planning a surprise party for the global financial system where the only gift on the registry is financial chaos? Let's roll up our sleeves and sift through the glitter, shall we? Shiny rocks, very real data, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the gold bug. This isn't your typical gloom and doom fear-mongering about hidden bunkers and tinfoil hats. I'm not about to tell you to sell your house and convert everything to gold coins that you can dramatically pour through your fingers while cackling maniacally. The buying frenzy is real, I promise. It shows up in official ledgers from all across the globe. Central banks, wealthy finance fiends, your eccentric great uncle who's been predicting the end of the world since 1987 and might finally be onto something. They're snapping up gold faster than we can say, wait, is the world ending, or is this just another Tuesday? Central banks added nearly 1,136 tons of gold in 2022 alone. That's the most since 1967, when the US dollar was still backed by gold and people thought bell-bottoms were a good idea. Coincidence? I think not. While your favourite news networks yammer about cat videos and whichever celebrity wore the most questionable outfit this week, the biggest gold land grab in living memory is gently taking place behind the scenes, like a financial heist movie where the thieves are actually the banks themselves. Suspicious. You bet your ass it is. Remember our journey through financial history. Every time there's a major shift in the global monetary system, gold goes absolutely bonkers. When the Bretton Woods system collapsed in 1971 and Nixon closed the gold window, gold soared from $35 to $850 in just 9 years. That's a casual 2,300% increase, which makes Bitcoin's gains look like a rounding error. Creeping into 2025, the year that makes Nostradamus look like an amateur. Get this, multiple data points are shining a big flashy arrow at the year 2025. Could be spring, could be right after everyone flunks their New Year's resolutions. Nobody's nailed the exact date. But these so-called technical indicators are apparently forming some rare cosmic alignment that only shows up once in a generation, or in an underground UFO fight club. 2 previous times we had a pattern like this, gold soared by a casual 400% in about a year and a half. Is that nuts? Absolutely fucking bonkers. Is that also potentially happening again? You bet your entire piggy bank it might be. The first time was in the late 1970s, when inflation was running hotter than a jalapeño in a sauna, and gold went from around $100 to over $800. The second time was after the 2008 financial crisis, when central banks were printing money faster than a counterfeiter on methamphetamines, and gold went from around $700 to nearly $1,900. And now, we've got inflation that makes the 1970s look like a warm-up act, money printing that makes 2008 look like fiscal restraint, and geopolitical tensions that make the Cold War look like a friendly game of chess. It's like someone took all the ingredients for a gold rally, put them in a blender and hit apocalypse. Capital flows and conspiracies a la mode. Follow the money if you can see it through all the smoke. Imagine giant swirling arrows of money, zipping out of certain continents and landing squarely in safe haven assets. Cue dramatic music that sounds like the love child of the Jaws theme and the Imperial March from Star Wars. People are freaking out about potential currency fiascos, bond crises, or some dreaded day when banks decide to close their doors until further notice. We've seen weirder things, folks, like NFTs of pixelated monkeys selling for millions. Behind the scenes, the big money is sliding quietly into gold like it's their personal bunk bed in a doomsday bunker. If you think that's paranoid, just wait until you see the next meltdown. Then again, maybe they're just bored. Maybe buying gold is the billionaire equivalent of impulse buying candy at the checkout line. But if I had $1 for every time a meltdown did happen right after I laughed it off, well, I'd convert it to gold anyway, because that's apparently what all the cool rich kids are doing. Remember our discussion about global capital flows? Money doesn't just disappear, it relocates. When Japan's bubble burst in 1989, capital fled to Southeast Asia. When the tiger economies collapsed in 1997, money flowed into US tech stocks. When the dot-com bubble burst in 2000, capital moved into housing. And now, it seems like a significant portion is flowing into gold, like a river of money finding its way to the shiniest pond. 24 March 2025. Because we needed a drama date. Mark your calendars for potential chaos. Everyone's whispering about some big shift around March 2025. Charts are out here looking like alien crop circles, with lines converging, blinking, and basically screaming, "Pay attention, you financially illiterate morons." Some say it's a war cycle. Others say it's just the world's biggest poker bluff. But if you have a hunch that real crisis could erupt, you might be in good company. Some very wealthy folks are apparently preparing with gold bricks as their currency of choice. So if you see a quaint little chart on the internet featuring bright lines that all meet around March 2025, don't just keep scrolling, my friend. Keep a close eye on your assets and maybe on your neighbour's suspiciously large stash of gold candies, which might not actually be chocolate under that foil. What's so special about March 2025? Well, it's when several major cyclical patterns converge, including the end of the current Federal Reserve tightening cycle, assuming they don't break something important before then. The peak of the current geopolitical tension cycle, which tends to run in roughly 7-year intervals. The beginning of a new commodity supercycle, as we discussed in our commodities chapter. The point where Gerald the Depression Pigeon's gold hoarding reaches critical mass, causing him to collapse under the weight of his own treasure. Is this scientific? About as scientific as astrology, but with more spreadsheets and fewer references to Mercury being in retrograde. But here's the thing. Enough people believe in these cycles that they become self-fulfilling prophecies. It's like how everyone decides to wear green on St. Patrick's Day. There's no law requiring it, but good luck being the only person not wearing green. The golden bullseye. Price targets that will make your eyes water. Word on the street is that gold could be heading for $3,100. This is supposedly our appetizer level. Because sure, tripling your savings is cute, like when a toddler does a somersault and everyone claps politely. $3,400. For the bold among us who do the told you so dance every time gold spikes again. This is the, I'm not saying I predicted this, but here's a screenshot of my tweet from 2 years ago, level. $3,800. The rumoured apex if 2025 gets real spicy. Possibly a major meltdown, mega conflict, or some meltdowny conflict where countries start throwing financial tantrums at each other. This is the I'm converting my swimming pool into a gold vault territory. Fun tidbit. The same folks calling these numbers also call them conservative. Like your friend at the buffet who says they're only having a little dessert, then devours half the chocolate fountain and asks if you're going to finish yours. Could gold go higher? Some folks believe it might hit $5,000, $10,000, or even higher numbers that sound like they were generated by a random number generator operated by a squirrel on amphetamines. Me, I'm just your friendly, wisecracking messenger. Don't shoot the messenger, especially if the messenger is holding gold, because that shit's heavy and might deflect the bullet. How to prep your own treasure chest without looking like a complete lunatic. So, let's say you don't want to be caught off guard if 2025 decides to blow up your portfolio like a financial Michael Bay movie. Thinking about gold? Maybe you want to be the modern-day pirate, burying metals in your backyard and creating a treasure map that you'll inevitably lose. Or maybe you'd prefer a locked vault that doesn't require a shovel and a treasure map. Either way, you'll need to do your homework, unless you enjoy making financial decisions based on TikTok videos and fortune cookies. That's why I've put together a bonus and totally free mini guide for you. It covers why people hoard gold. Hint, it's not just for doomsday prep or because it matches their bathroom fixtures. Storage hacks, fireproof safes, off-site vaults, or your Aunt Edna's basement, which, I must legally note, is not recommended unless Aunt Edna has better security than Fort Knox. When to buy. Spoiler, not necessarily when the internet is screaming, "to the moon," and definitely not from that guy selling coins on late-night TV who looks like he might also sell you a timeshare or a slightly used kidney. Lastly, remember that I'm not your financial advisor. I'm just an over-caffeinated commentator telling you that the big players are quietly loading up on gold and cracking cryptic jokes about 2025. So, make of that what you will. Just try not to fall asleep at the wheel while the financial equivalent of a monster truck rally might be about to start. Gold mining. The global treasure hunt for people who like dirt with their dividends. If you're convinced gold is about to go bananas, why settle for boring bullion when you can invest in the companies that literally dig money out of the ground? It's like owning part of a legal pirate operation, except instead of eye patches and parrots, you get quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. From Australia's outback operations, where miners battle deadly spiders between gold strikes, to Canada's frozen north, where they mine gold just to stay warm, to South Africa's deep earth adventures, where miners need GPS to find their way back to the surface. There's a flavour of gold mining insanity for every investor's taste. And for you dividend-hungry vampires who need regular transfusions of cash to feel alive, hop over to tradingview.com, where you can stalk mining companies' dividend yields like a desperate ex-monitoring Instagram stories. Just remember, the higher the yield, the more likely the company is either incredibly generous or about to perform a financial magic trick where your investment disappears faster than Gerald's confidence during market corrections. Happy treasure hunting, you financial Indiana Joneses. Don't let the shiniest moment pass you by. FOMO, fear of missing out on gold. In this wild ride we call the global economy, gold has always been the weird friend you laugh at, until everything goes belly up. Then suddenly, that weird friend is your best buddy, the only one who remembered to bring snacks and water to the apocalypse. If the data's right, we may be on the cusp of a spectacular run in precious metals. But hey, it might also be an overhyped fiasco, like Y2K, or that time everyone thought the world would end because the Mayan calendar ran out of space. Either way, don't say nobody warned you. If you're intrigued, do your research, set your strategy, and keep an eye on these massive money flows swirling around like an action movie plot twist. Because if gold really does explode to those wild price targets, you'll want to be the person holding the golden ticket, not the one left asking, "Why didn't I at least buy a single coin when I had the chance?" while eating ramen noodles in your unheated apartment. And remember our journey through the history of gold and silver. This wouldn't be the first time gold has gone absolutely bananas. When the Roman Empire collapsed, gold soared. When the Spanish brought back too much silver from the New World and devalued their currency, gold soared. When the British Empire declined, gold soared. When the US abandoned the gold standard in 1971, gold soared. It's like gold has a PhD in profiting from human catastrophe. Thanks for reading, And remember, stay curious, stay weird, and keep your eyes peeled for the next big twist in the golden age we never asked for but might be getting anyway. Because in the immortal words of Spandau Ballet, gold. Always believe in your soul. You've got the power to know. You're indestructible. Though to be fair, they probably weren't talking about financial markets, but it sounds profound enough to end on. And Gerald the Depression Pigeon? He's seen it all before. He's currently building a nest entirely out of gold flakes and rare earth minerals, waiting for the next crisis so he can sagely coo, "I told you so." But even Gerald has to admit, this gold rally might be something special. A perfect storm of inflation, geopolitical tension, and central bank buying that could send the yellow metal to heights that would make even the most pessimistic pigeons' feathers ruffle with excitement. ATPS www.youtube.com at the Global Shift 2032. God save the king, and maybe the pound. Britain. The country that gave us Shakespeare, the Beatles, and the concept of apologising when someone else steps on your foot. For centuries, the British pound was the currency equivalent of that one friend who went to Oxford and somehow manages to mention it in every fucking conversation. Oh, you're having financial troubles? Well, at Oxford, we learned that proper budgeting is essential. We get it, pound sterling. You were once important. But holy shit, have things changed? The pound has gone from imperial swagger to what can only be described as a currency with the confidence of a teenage boy trying to unhook a bra for the first time. Panicky, sweaty, and ultimately disappointing for all involved. Let's back up a second. The UK has been a global powerhouse for centuries. At one point, you practically couldn't spill a cup of tea on Earth without it being labelled British territory. But you wouldn't know that from looking at sterling's performance over the decades. This currency has faced so many ups and downs, it's basically the economic version of your friend who invests in questionable crypto and then wonders why their bank account has the sad beep. Once upon a time, British monarchs had enough illusions of grandeur that a pound was worth over $5. $5. That's not a currency exchange rate. That's a fucking power move. Oh, you have dollars? How quaint. I have pounds. But fast forward through the big highlights. Post-World War II devaluations, the comedic fiasco of the exchange rate mechanism exit in 1992, which we'll get to in a moment, and the more recent meltdown after the Brexit referendum, when the pound basically took one look at the tall cliff labelled uncertainty and said, Geronimo. And that 1992 ERM disaster. That wasn't just any ordinary financial hiccup. That was Black Wednesday, a day so catastrophic for the British economy that it should have its own disaster movie starring Dwayne Johnson as the pound and Helen Mirren as the Bank of England, desperately trying to save it while everything explodes around them. The UK had joined this European currency club where everyone agreed to keep their currencies within certain ranges of each other. Like a financial version of synchronised swimming, except Britain turned out to be the one person who can't even float. When speculators, led by some billionaire whose name we won't mention here, who made £1 billion in the process, started betting against sterling, the Bank of England tried everything short of standing on the street corner with a "Please buy pounds" sign. They raised interest rates to 15% in a single day. That's not monetary policy, that's financial panic. It's like trying to put out a kitchen fire by flooding your entire neighbourhood. But the real pièce de résistance in the pound's journey toward humiliation came with Brexit. When Britons voted to leave the EU in 2016, the pound didn't just decline, it fucking nosedived. It was the currency equivalent of that video where the guy tries to jump into a pool from a roof but hits the concrete instead. You know the one. It makes you wince just thinking about it. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, along came Liz Truss and her mini budget in 2022. I say mini in the same way the Titanic had a minor navigation issue. This wasn't just a budget, it was a financial death wish. Truss and her Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, announced massive unfunded tax cuts that sent the markets into a panic not seen since the last time Britain fucked up its currency. The pound crashed to its lowest level against the dollar in history. Government borrowing costs soared, and pension funds nearly collapsed. It was so bad that a British newspaper set up a live stream of a lettuce to see if it would outlast Truss's premiership. Spoiler alert, the lettuce won. The fucking lettuce outlasted the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. That's not just a political failure, that's a punchline that writes itself. So here we are today, with the pound hovering nervously above dollar parity like a skydiver whose parachute was packed by the same people who planned Brexit. The question isn't just whether the pound could fall below $1, it's whether anyone would even be surprised when it happens. And why is this happening? Well, for one thing, Britain has a persistent current account deficit, meaning it imports more than it exports. This puts constant downward pressure on the pound, like trying to run uphill while carrying a refrigerator and being chased by a bear wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Then there's the political instability. Since 2016, Britain has had more prime ministers than some people have had haircuts. This revolving door at 10 Downing Street doesn't exactly scream stable investment environment, it screams, what the fuck is happening over there? And investors, being the skittish creatures they are, don't stick around to find out. They grab their money and run to safer havens, typically the US dollar or Swiss franc. If the pound does break below dollar parity, the psychological impact would be enormous. Imagine the country that once had the world's reserve currency now having to admit its money is worth less than America's. A country it still, sometimes, patronizingly refers to as the colonies. It would be like finding out your successful child now earns more than you do. Theoretically, you should be proud, but it's still a bit of a blow to the ego. The practical impacts would be just as significant. Britain imports about half of its food and most of its energy. A weaker pound means higher prices for everything from Spanish tomatoes to Saudi oil. It's like going to the supermarket and finding that everything costs more, but your salary hasn't changed. For British tourists, a sub-dollar pound would mean that trip to Disney World just got 30% more expensive than it was a decade ago. Suddenly those Mickey Mouse ears look a lot less appealing when they cost half a day's wages. There is, however, a silver lining for some. British exporters would find their goods more competitive abroad. Foreign tourists would flock to London, finding that afternoon tea at the Ritz is now merely expensive, rather than requiring you to sell a kidney on the black market. And American retirees might start considering cottages in the Cotswolds instead of condos in Florida, which would at least give British villagers someone new to complain about at the pub. Could things turn around? Of course. The pound has shown remarkable resilience over the centuries, bouncing back from crises that would have destroyed lesser currencies. If inflation stabilises, political stability returns, and the Bank of England threads the needle on interest rates, sterling could regain its mojo. But for now, the pound remains in a precarious position, teetering on the edge of a psychological cliff. It's like watching a once mighty boxer, now past their prime, stepping into the ring against a younger, more vigorous opponent. You want to believe they still have what it takes, but you can't help wincing with every punch. So, what's a Brit to do while waiting to see if their currency becomes worth less than $1? Perhaps take comfort in the fact that national worth isn't measured solely in exchange rates. Britain still has Shakespeare and the Beatles, and the ability to form an orderly queue in any situation. And if all else fails, there's always tea, although even that might need to be rationed if the pound keeps falling. In the meantime, if you're planning a trip to Britain, now might be the time to go. Your dollars will stretch further than they have in decades. Just don't mention the exchange rate to the locals. They're still a bit sensitive about it. And whatever you do, don't suggest they should have kept the empire. Some wounds never heal, especially when they're self-inflicted with the economic equivalent of a rusty spoon.